So the question we want to ask right now ourselves is the following. What
Sentito
would the
bene?
world look like if we believed in positive organization? What would the world look like if we believed that work, that well-being at the workplace is actually a centerpiece for the strategy of the organization? That's what we're going to look at together. So, if we go to the
Non si
next
sente
slide,
benissimo,
it is a
potrei
custom
migliorare.
when we do a speech in the TED format to start with a story about childhood. So, when I was a child, when I was 3 months old, I was actually a pretty happy baby. I had beautiful hair, more than today. And I remember distinctly that crisp morning where I thought to myself, I'm feeling really happy. And that remained the same for a while, up to the point when, being 20 years old, I was at work and I actually had my first happiness attack. So you might have heard of a panic attack, but what I had was a happiness attack. I remember sitting at my desk, looking at my colleagues, and suddenly, wow, feeling really warm. I had to stand up, and then I looked at them and I told them, I'm feeling really happy. I don't know what's going on. And I started laughing. So I was pretty dazzled. I was pretty surprised by what happened to me. So I decided to look into happiness. And I started reading neuroscience, happiness economics, philosophy, positive psychology. And what I discovered was that indeed there was a happiness science. Yes, after 5,000 years of civilization, we had come to a point where we started to understand the precise mechanisms for individual and collective happiness or thriving. So, to give you an illustration of that, if we go to the next slide, I did something simple. I wanted to look at on Google what type of image do we find if we type the simple words well being. That's what we find. So it's quite surprising, isn't it? What do we see? We see a family, we see yoga, we see different things. But most of all, we see diagrams, we see org charts, we see histograms, we see schemes, map, charts. In other words, there is a lot of analysis, there is a science about well being. Now, if we go to the next slide, I would like us to have a look at one key learning we get from well-being economics. There is this economist named Richard Easterlin, he's American, and he had this idea. He's giving us a great insight. If we draw on the x-axis the wealth of a nation and on the vertical axis the happiness of that nation, then we discover that when the wealth is increasing per capita, so does happiness, but up to a point, and then it starts leveling up. So it's quite surprising. Now, what's even more surprising is that maybe we've made a mistake. We have been assuming for a while that economic performance was driving well being of a nation. What if it was the contrary? Could we think just for 1 second, what if it was the other way around and well being in general, and maybe well being at work, was actually driving performance? That's one of the founding principles of the positive organizations. Organizations that believe that if they foster well being of the people, first of all, it's very important from a moral standpoint, and second of all, they will generate performance. Now, if we go to the next slide, I want to share a short story about myself when I was a young professional. I used to work in San Francisco, that beautiful city that you see on the picture, in that beautiful tower. And I was a young, ambitious man. However, my boss, John, I changed his name for the purpose of the story. Well, John had a gimmick with me that was pretty unpleasant. I would do my work, and every time I would bring my work to him, he would look at me and tell me, Alex, you know what to do. And I would say, come on, John, please, not another time. And he would say, yes, Alex, do it. I would have to take my work and put it directly in his trash can without him even looking at it. Well, let me tell you, I wasn't performing really well under that stress situation. So I've kept from those days a simple idea. There has to be a strong connection, a negative one, between stress and performance. Now, if we go to the next slide, I want to turn to you and ask you, think about it for a second. What do you feel in your body when you are stressed out? If you think about it for a second, the words that will come to your mind are showing on the slide, and you will see words like tired, fast heartbeat, it's hard to focus, you're impatient, you react too quickly, you're tense, you're sedated, you're sleepy, you're cloud-minded, you're hot-tempered, annoyed. All of those go in one direction. You will agree with me, I think, that those words indicate some sort of under-optimal functioning, both in terms of well-being and in terms of performance. Now, if we go to the next slide and turn to science, what we learn from neuroscience is the following. We have three brains. The first one is the reptilian brain. That brain is in charge of maintaining the integrity of the body in case of life threats, of emergency, for instance. The second brain is the limbic brain. That's the one that manages our emotions. That's the one that is responsible for automation, procedures, processes, all of those. And then we have the highest brain, the neocortex. It's a beautiful architecture. That high brain is responsible for rationality, creativity, innovation. However, sometimes that beautiful architecture becomes dysfunctional. When that happens, we have our limbic brain that triggers the reptilian brain to react. We believe that we are in a life threat situation. We're entering a meeting room and we think that there is a life danger. When that happens, the reptilian brain engages one of the three emergency modes. You fight, you see the predator, so you fight the predator, you run away from the predator, or you pretend that you're dead. Now, I leave it to you to think whether this is an appropriate behavior in the workplace. Let's assume for a second you have that big meeting, high-stake meeting. You're entering the meeting room, and then you get stressed out, you believe it's a life threat, and you have three reactions. Reaction number one is you look at your boss, you're stressed out, you think, I'm bigger than my boss. You fight your boss, you punch your boss. Reaction number one. Reaction number two, you look at your boss, you think, well, he's actually bigger than me. Maybe I should run away. So you run out of the conference room. Nobody sees you anymore. Reaction number three, well, it's unfortunate because your boss is bigger than you, but he runs faster than you. Then you have one more option. You play dead. You hide under the conference table and you pretend that you're sleeping. What I'm trying to share with you is the following. When we are under a stress situation, we actually have a reduction of our cognitive capabilities. We are less performing. Now, if we go to the next slide and we try to see the opposite side of it, the beautiful side of it. Sometimes our brain is positive. Some people call it being in the flow. You are focused on what you're doing, you're feeling really well, and you're performing really well. And I wanted to take a hard science example. So I went to see our friend Jason Bourne, the spy. You remember the spy from the Bourne Identity? Well, Jason Bourne is a pretty cool spy. He's being run after by the bad guys all the time, but he's staying cool, calm, with a positive brain. At some point, he enters a restaurant. He's got that beautiful red-haired lady with him. He comes in at the restaurant. He walks for a couple meters. He sits down at the table. In the couple meters that from the entrance of the restaurant to the table, he's been very active, calm, positive, active. He tells his girlfriend, in this restaurant, there are 5 emergency exits, 4 people, 3 men, and 2 of those men, they know how to fight. In the meantime, you would have done the same. You would have tripped on something. You would have not found the table and spilled your coffee on the table. When you're in the flow, when you have a positive brain, you can call it being aware. You can call it having a well-functioning brain, having positive emotions. You are in a state where you have a broadening of your cognitive capabilities. When you feel well, you're just better at what you do. Now, if we go to the next slide, we will have a look. It's a study from Sonia Lyubomirsky that shows all 5 big qualities we have when we feel well. Number 1, we cooperate more. You feel well, so you cooperate with your coworkers. Number 2, you are in better health. You're less absent, you're less sick, you go to work more, you're in good health. Number 3, you're more efficient. At work, you do things just fine, you go straight to the point, your brain is working well. Number 4, you're more engaged, and even more important, you mobilize people better. You mobilize them. You have leadership. You're a positive leader. And last of all, you are more creative. You are more innovative. You take initiative. Now, if we go to the next slide, when I tell you that, you might think, wow, this is great, but what can we do? Well, actually, today, I've got some good news for you. We have understood what the drivers of well-being were. We know them. And if we have a look at them quickly together, the first one is about work itself. What type of work do you do that's driving your well-being at work? What organization of the work is in place at your company? What type of management? What's your relation to time, urgency, emergency? A second big pillar of work and well-being at work is your environment. What are the working conditions? What is your compensation? Do you have a work-life balance? And of course, do you have job security? And then values. The values are the following. Do you have a good relation with your coworkers, with your manager? What's the governance at your company? Is there a positive governance? What about ethics? Is your company ethical? Is it taking into account the future? And then do you receive proper training? So what do we learn from that? We learn 2 things. Number 1, not all of them are costly. You can act on ethics or relations without putting money if you're an organization. And number 2, that's a very wide range of drivers. So we have no excuse. If we want to put well-being at work in place at the organization, we know what to do. We've got plenty of levers to act on. Now, we're about done, but we have 2 more important questions. If we go to the next slide, you might tell me, well, your speech is really cute, Alexander, but how am I sure that this is really going to impact the organization? As we see on that yellow smile, if we take a company, one given company, for instance, the Metropolitan Life, they've tried to put in place a policy fostering well-being and optimism. The results they got a year after that policy was an increase in revenue of 70% year 1 and 60% year 2. That's at the micro level. Now, if we go at the macro level, based on a study from Mozart Consulting, if you increase the quality of life at work, well-being, by 10% only, we would get, as a nation in France, 1% increase in gross domestic product. So we have 2 options. Option 1, just like that text we see on the right, you're thinking, well, you're staying in the old paradigm, like this person who was commenting the crash of the A320. He was saying, I'm going to identify those people who are exhausted at my work, about to burn out, and I'm simply going to get rid of them right away. Option 2, as we see with that beautiful triangle, we're shifting to a new paradigm. We are an organization and we think that, number 1, the well-being of the people is a moral imperative. And we're thinking that, number 2, if we foster well-being of the people, then we will generate greater economic performance. Now, if we go to our last slide together, you might say, well, but is this happening? Look at those organizations. All those organizations are working towards positive organizations. You've got universities, Berkeley, Harvard, you've got Dauphine, Central Paris. You've got companies like Gore, Zappos, who are putting well-being at the centerpiece of their strategy. You have think tanks like ours, the Fabrique Spinoza. And then you even have countries like the United Kingdom, where they take well-being as a centerpiece of the measurements of their social progress. Now, my conclusion will be simple. This is happening. The movement towards positive organization and well-being at the workplace is happening. What we can do is either embark on that boat, join the adventure, or not. And to finish, I will say, let's join that movement. And I wish all of you, ladies and gentlemen, a beautiful journey and trip towards positive organizations and well-being at work. Thank you very much.